out of storage. That's okay. Hi, you guys. All right. It's good to be back and doing these lives and connecting with everyone. I kind of miss it, I have to say. It's good to take a break. I took a break during summer. You might have seen I was out and about adventuring in my camper van, and I was in Oregon, and then I was in Idaho, and it was fabulous. So much so, I love it so much that I'm actually going to be going to Mexico for 5 months in December till end of May. So I love my camper van that much. And currently aprendo español. It's going very slowly, but it's going. But anyway, it's always good to be back here and connecting with you guys. I want to talk about like the basics of hormonal balance, because that's really like a lot of times we talk about, doing this or that for hormonal balance. And I kind of want to pull back and discuss the fact that, and remind and maybe make you aware, if this is new to you, that hormones don't just like one day decide to collapse, including when you're going through perimenopause and menopause. It's when a lot of your body systems and nutritional deficiencies are corrected, or you're you're basically well nourished, your organs are functioning fairly well, and your inflammation is kept at bay, then what happens is your hormones are going to have a much better chance of functioning really well as compared to someone who is constantly inflamed, who is highly deficient in a lot of different nutrients, and who is not sleeping and all of that good stuff. So so today I want to talk about three things that I think are very underestimated. The first thing is, let's talk about the health of your liver and how overlooked it is a lot of the time in the context of hormones. And number two, I want to talk about is B vitamin, and how do you know if you're deficient in B vitamins. And number three, we're going to talk about is going to be about magnesium and the role of magnesium in your hormonal balance. So, having done this work for quite a while, it's really quite interesting to see when we correct those deficiencies, how much better our hormones are performing. And remember that your hormones don't just go out of balance like one day they decide to take a hiatus and be like, we don't want to work anymore. It's typically years and years and years, a month sometimes. It could be months, it could be a couple of years, few years of just kind of our own negligence. And I'm not shaming here anyone. It's more of like, you just don't know any better, right? You do what you know at a time when you do it, but you don't know any better. So you just don't do it. And so, things like, for example, liver health. Let me give you an example of that. I'll never forget, like one of the pivotal moments in my own journey was the fact that I was diagnosed this is about like 15 years ago, I was diagnosed with estrogen dominance. And one of the things that, the first test that I did, because back then there was no Dutch, there was no saliva testing, I don't think. And so the only test that was available for estrogen dominance was a blood test that tested the 2,16 hydroxyestrone. And it's a pretty decent test, but it doesn't tell you everything, but it was better than nothing, right? So I had it done, and it was pretty clear that I had estrogen dominance based on that. I had too many of those dirty estrogens, if you will, right? I always talk about the dirty estrogens. And that was the cause of my, I was having really bad hair loss at that point, and it was not thyroid related. Typically, when the first thing you want to look at when you have hair loss is getting your thyroid checked properly, right? And so I was like, okay, well, that's not that. So especially the estrogen dominance. And one of the first things that I did when I got the results was start looking around and researching, how do I move the balance more so my body metabolizes those estrogens more towards the good estrogens and away from the dirty estrogens, right? Based on the results. And, and the thing that kept coming up was the liver, that I need to do some things to support my liver. So I was like, okay. And ever since then, I got to appreciate the organ so much, because we think of the liver as an organ that helps you detoxify of alcohol, caffeine. You probably know that. But the liver actually does a lot more. It also detoxifies us from estrogens. It helps us to get rid of testosterone. It helps us to convert thyroid, the T4 hormone, to T3. So for those of you who are, for example, on thyroid replacement therapy like Synthroid, you are getting a synthetic T4, and then so you're depending on the health of your liver to convert a T4 to T3, right? And if your liver is not functioning well, then you're not converting to T3, and T3 is your working horse. T3 is what gives you like great energy, good mental health, all the good stuff like hair, nice hair, skin, and all that. So we have receptors for T3 and not for T4 in the body. So this was like my first big aha moment of like, wow, the liver is so important. Not to mention that the health of your liver also is going to determine how stable is your blood sugar balance, right? And help us metabolize it, store a lot of different nutrients, and the list is so long. So here we are, talking about the liver, and it's like, and a lot of times, like if I asked you, well, let me open this up for you guys. So what do you think, what have you done on your end to help yourself with liver health? Like what could you do? And while I'm waiting for your comments to come in, I would just mention that, a lot of times when I used to do like in-person workshops, and people will say, oh yeah, like I do a detox once a year or twice a year, right? And so people go on these really restricted detoxes, and it's in various forms. It's either spending a lot of money on different very expensive shakes, or doing fasting, or whatever. There's so many different formats, right, of these detoxes, and there's nothing really wrong with it as long as it makes you feel good. The problem is that it's a little bit. Think of it this way: it's a little bit like saying, when somebody asks you, how often do you get your house cleaned? And you go, oh, once a year I do like a major clean out, right? And other than that, like I don't really do much. I just put a potpourri, so it smells nice. I mean, you know what I'm going with this, right? Like you need to, like every day you probably want to tidy up the house a little bit. And probably once or, every other week, you maybe have a housekeeper coming to clean the house, right? And so we need to upkeep things on a regular basis in order to feel good. And it's the same thing goes for your liver. So it is way more beneficial for the liver for you to do small things every day or every other day, and incorporating little things like food and stuff into, and let's talk about that, right? What are those? Instead of just be doing like, instead of eating crap and then suddenly going, once a year, I just do this massive detox, right? And a lot of times, actually, after detoxes, people start binging, because a lot of detoxes, unfortunately, are quite depleting. And then your body is just like, oh my God, give me all the nutrients. I need all the nutrients to function properly. And then people go, oh, binging. And then they're angry with themselves because like, hey, I just detox. I can eat all that crap, right? So anyway, you know where I'm going with this. And, and so if you want to do a detox twice a year, that's totally fine. But I would also want to encourage you every day, do little things. So what are those little things? Like, what do you think you can do on a daily basis, that can support your liver health, right? So start spitting out some ideas here. And I'm just curious, what do you guys do to support your liver? So I'm going to start first. So one of the big ones is going to be pooping every day. Okay. You've got to poop every day. For those of you who are constipated, laxatives are obviously not a long-term good solution, but you can do certain things like, for example, take, like magnesium citrate and facilitate that process of doing some movement, having movement, good bowel movement, right? So Caitlin is saying, for example, lots of water, limited alcohol, and milk thistle. That's a great idea. What else? What else are you guys doing? So that's, that's going to be a big win. Why? Because if you're not pooping every day, and when I say pooping every day, it's not like a little bit coming out, but like actually feeling emptied, then what happens is your body then recirculates. It's recirculating all the toxins. They get reabsorbed by the colon, And the colon is very absorptive, you guys, you know, and everything gets reabsorbed and then recirculated. So the liver is kind of like having now a double job of having to do this detoxification again. But it gets worse. Things are now backed up, right? So think of the liver as like a sieve. And if you don't clean that sieve on a regular basis, then you basically, by not you being constipated, you're basically like adding more and more things to the sieve. So just, you know, it just becomes a much harder working organ. And at some point it starts prioritizing. And the liver would always prioritize things like heavy metals, you know, or certain bacteria and viruses to get rid of those first, because the liver also takes care of those parasites, versus like hormones. Hormones, like, it's not going to kill you, you know, but a heavy metal could, or damage you a lot more. So the body is so smart and prioritizes toxins. Unfortunately, your hormones are going to be on the lower list, for better or worse. So that's one big trick. And there's a couple of other things that, you know, I did a lot of videos about constipation in the past. A couple of tips here. If you're constipated, is magnesium citrate is one great one. Avoiding dairy is a big win. A lot of people are constipated because of dairy. I went out with some friends for dinner last night, and we had a gluten-free pizza, but the pizza, unfortunately, the server made a mistake and came with cheese. And so I was like, suck it up. It's already getting late and I'm hungry. So I ate it, and today I'm constipated. So I should have known better. I should have done some magnesium citrate last night. I forgot to do it. So that's going to be like one of your easy things to do to get going. The other one is fiber, you guys, you know, and so like 30 grams of fiber every day. And my favorite form of fiber would be flaxseed, because flaxseed is going to be giving you insoluble fiber. So it's like a sweep through the colon, right? Soluble fiber. So that's really great for like prebiotics as well. And it creates a kind of gelatinous, you know, structure, so that like a mucus, right? And so when combined with water, and then evacuates things really nicely. So, but flaxseed is also slightly estrogenic, which is good because it gives you the good estrogens, and it helps to metabolize actually the bad estrogen. So you know how I talked about at the beginning of the video that when I found out that I had a liver problem when I had estrogen dominance, actually one of the first things I started was flaxseed, a couple of tablespoons of freshly ground flaxseed every day. And I retested about a couple of months later, and my dirty estrogens significantly went down. So that was a huge win. Lisa is asking, fiber 30 grams daily. Yes, it is 30 grams daily. So that's, so that's one great way of supporting your liver. What else? You know, one thing that we're going to be talking about in just a minute is magnesium, right? So, so still on flaxseed, Jenny's asking, is it okay to eat whole flaxseed? Is it okay, but your body's not gonna, it depends what you want to use it for. So whole flaxseed is great for constipation. In fact, that's one of the, you know, naturopathic remedies, is to put 2 tablespoons of flaxseed, not ground, but whole, in a glass of water, gulping it down before going to bed. And that actually like expands in your colon, but you gotta have enough water, and then evacuates everything. And so that's a great way of creating a bowel movement, a gentle one, but it's not a laxative, right? It's just like a facilitator. The only challenge with that is that you're not getting any benefit beyond just the evacuation part, you know, because your body's not going to be able to digest the seeds. And so if you also want to have the benefit of the flaxseed with like for all the phytoestrogenic properties, then you do it in a ground form. And that's my favorite. So 2 tablespoons of that. So magnesium is another one. The liver loves magnesium. The liver also loves B vitamins. So as you can see, you know where I'm going with this whole thing, right? Like, support your liver. And the B vitamins are going to be, there's a lot, like if you look at what the liver needs in different pathways, whether it's sulfation pathway, methylation pathway, glucuronation pathway, it needs cofactors. So those are like helpers to bind up those toxins and then evacuate them. And so, you know, B vitamins are almost in every one of the pathways. B vitamins are necessary for that. Magnesium is also required in quite a number of those pathways as a cofactor. So it doesn't matter what type of magnesium. The only form of magnesium that we are not fond of at Helena is the oxide on its own. it doesn't really do very much, and it can actually do hurt. So you want to do things like malate, glycinate. Citrate is a laxative, so it's not a great way of supporting the liver, but it's a great laxative per se. Let's see what else. And threonate, that's another form of magnesium that we just launched. It's great for your brain as well. So yeah, so what else for the liver? One thing that the liver loves is bitters, right? So for those of you who have tried our digestive bitters in the store, I know we have like a fan club, people who just really love our digestive bitters. Those are things that you squirt in your mouth. It tastes really good before a meal, and then we have another one after a meal. And that creates like kind of digestive fire. The more you digest the food, the better it is going to be, the easier it is for the liver to process. And so, and for that reason, it is generally highly advisable to use that. Plus also, like, digestive bitters also typically contain herbs that would also help the liver to function better. The other thing is, when you work with herbs, like many of you have mentioned here, milk thistle. Milk thistle is fantastic. You guys, when my dad was dying of liver cancer, my dad passed away in February. But when he was diagnosed with liver cancer, one of the things that the doctor prescribed was silymarin, and silymarin is the active compound in milk thistle. And the whole purpose of milk thistle, one of the biggest efficacies of milk thistle, is that it helps to rebuild the liver. So for people who have lost, for example, the part of the liver due to surgery, or former alcoholics where the liver needs to rebuild itself, silymarin or milk thistle is just amazing for that. But there's more things you can do for your liver. So one of my favorites is also doing things that help your bile flow. So let me just do a quick recap. How many of you here know what bile is for? And so the fact that your poop is brown, that's because of bile. Bile is actually kind of green in color, but then when it gets combined with digested food, that's what gives it the brown color. And so if your stool, for example, is pale, that's an indication that you might not be producing enough bile. So interesting thing about the bile is that the bile is produced by the liver, and then it gets stored in a sac called the gallbladder, which some of you may know this because you have had your gallbladder removed. And then when we digest fatty foods, that's when a gallbladder just like spurts out bile in order for it to get emulsified. So emulsification is like soap, like you want to get fat off your fingers, right? That soapy feeling. That's what the gallbladder, that's what the bile does. That's what we know about. But what a lot of people don't realize is that bile is also what binds up dirty estrogens in women. And so this is really important piece of information, you guys, because, this is like, it's not just the conversion. Sorry, it's not just the conversion in the liver that matters with the hormones, but it's also how your liver is able to produce bile. And the bile is then gonna then bind up those dirty estrogens and then create evacuation. So some of my favorite herbs that promote bile flow, this is key here, right, is things like artichoke, things like turmeric, things like dandelion root, things like endographis. And guess what? Many of them are part of our digestive bitters. And so that's the reason why I formulated it that way, so that we not only support the liver, but we also support the gallbladder and bile flow, right? Because, everything that we do at Hormones Balance is from a perspective of hormones and not just anything. So this is where, those are some of the simple things you can do. Furthermore, when we talk about bitter, so like, what kind of bitter herbs can you bring into your life? So think about that, right? Like dandelion leaves, like even parsley has got some bitter qualities to it. Radishes, and you don't have to be like sitting there and chomping down a radish. This is not everybody's favorite, but what you can do is if you can just chop up a radish and then put it into a salad that's got a lot of other really nice things, then it's a really fantastic way of just bringing a little bit of bitters into your diet, right? And so somebody's asking, why are the cloves and the bitters? Because a lot of the herbs that we use in our digestive bitters are very cooling. So, it's a formulation of herbal formulas is not just so that you guys know. I know this is not like probably something most of you do, but maybe you find it interesting. Is like when we formulate something at Wellena, it's not like we just throw a bunch of things in it and be like, oh, it tastes good. It's actually very well thought out. So one of the dimensions that we use is the fact that if we were to use, we want you to use it a long term. But if something is very cooling, it cools your body down. When you use it in the long term, then we also need to bring in herbs that are warming. And so clove was brought in order to warm up the body, because all the other herbs that we're using, like the endographics, like the roots, the gentian, all of them are highly cooling. If you take them in a long term, that might be, you might not feel very good. So when we balance things out with a clove, it just warms up the body. I like somebody saying, I like dandelion tea for my liver. That's awesome. Keep doing that. That's a wonderful thing to do, and like it's a wonderful thing to do, like for example, at night. And one other thing I would just mention about your liver, supporting your liver, is in a choice of your green leafy vegetables, put away the goddamn lettuce. I always talk about that, and I know some of you will be like, oh, what's wrong with lettuce? Like people get their feathers get very ruffled up when I say that, about lettuce. Well, lettuce is nutritionally really, really low in nutrients, okay? And we kind of let's focus on just bringing in food to your life that is like nutritionally dense. So your body is like getting as much nutrients as possible, and don't say you take a multivitamin, because it's just not the same, right? Try to get most of your nutrients from food. And so, it's like substitute it for something that's nutritionally dense. So what would that be? Mustard greens, arugula. Some of you I know love spinach. I'm not a big proponent of spinach because it's very high on oxalates. And so people overdo it with spinach and they get body pains and aches everywhere and got oxalate problems. But you can do a bit of spinach here and there. It's still better than a lettuce. And just like spring mix when you can get one of those, right? And those are nutritionally rich and much better things to do than lettuce. So the other thing about those leafy green vegetables, like also collard greens and so arugula I mentioned, and mustard greens, is that they are all in a category of cruciferous vegetables. And so they tend to be bitter naturally. But the other thing that's wonderful about them is the fact that they all, that's what DIM comes from, right? The aldehyde. Some of you like to take DIM for your estrogen dominance. And so guess where it's derived from? Broccoli. So taking that from food is just a wonderful addition of doing that. Okay, so that's about the liver. And let's see, any side effects of taking milk thistle? None of them that I'm aware of, unless your body is just like really reacting to it. But it's I've never really come across anybody having any any reactions to milk thistle. One of the products, like I really hope that you take some notes from today and some maybe inspiration that you can really modify your diet and change that, add that on your daily basis. And, if you are looking for implementing something like adding a supplement to it as well, consider our digestive bitters. We have it at the Wellena store. If you guys want to support us, that will be very much appreciated. Thank you. So we have our digestive bitters, the before and after. The before is a little bit stronger. The after is a little bit sweeter. So it's a little bit like a dessert after having a meal, but it's still like it's got things like fennel and and so it's like a nice digestive, if you will, afterwards, right? And then somebody's asking, do bitters increase stomach acid? No, they don't. But what happens is, unless you're talking about like digestive bitters you put in your mouth, digestive bitters are different. So bitter foods will not per se, not to that degree, but digestive bitters, like once you squirt it in, is actually they start the whole cascade of preparing your digestion for receiving food. And it's one of the wonderful things. And so then the stomach acid will increase, and so all the enzymes that get produced increase as well, because it's like the body literally is getting primed for receiving food, and produces all the juices to digest it, break it down, and extract all the nutrients of the food when you take digestive bitters prior. So it's a pretty awesome thing to do. If you think about it, it's like in most cultures, there is always like some kind of a digestive, right? So if you've been to North Italy, they have a Campari. If some of you are coming from, like, if you have German heritage, maybe you have like Jägermeister, right? For those of you who are from, maybe Scandinavian countries, you would know there's all sorts of different liquors in Iceland, in Denmark. I grew up in Denmark, so in Denmark it was called old gammeldansk, which means old Danish, and it's a very digestive, strong digestive. That I remember my dad knocking back, and like once in a while we'll get like a little sip, and you can do it before a meal or after a meal. So in terms of a supplement, one other thing that I want to mention, we have a really nice formula in our store. It's called the daily liver detox. And that contains milk thistle, but also we combine it with NAC, which is a precursor for your glutathione. Glutathione is a master detoxifier, and it's got also a touch of selenium, and it's got a little bit of alpha lipoic acid, and all of that are there. Those two are there to help you recycle that glutathione. So it's just getting maximum bang for your buck, excuse me, if you will. So that's another really nice supplement. It's digestive. Daily liver detox, Magdalena. Okay, so that's about the liver. Let me know if you have any questions. One of the things, like, I completely forgot to talk about this, but I think most of you kind of intuitively may know that you may need some liver support. But let me just mention a couple of interesting symptoms that are kind of pointing to the fact that you might need to get some liver support, right? And so, how do you know? You're like, do I just pop these things regardless? I think, like, as we age, we should be doing small daily things to support our liver health, period, right? And but like, how do you know that you might need to go a little bit deeper? Well, there's a lot of different symptoms of liver issues, and many of them can be due to a lot of other things. So here's a tricky thing, but I want to just talk about maybe a few symptoms and markers in your labs that are pretty indicative of your liver health. So the first thing is, like, if you're doing your comprehensive metabolic panel, your CMP, you will see the liver markers there. So like the ALT and ALP, those will be, and you always want to look at them with the range being below 30 and not what the labs are telling you. So this is one thing that's to be really, to pay attention to. But, oftentimes these markers will still look normal in spite of the fact that we having a lot of other issues. So another thing that happens is, if you have changed your diet, you've cleaned up your diet, and you reduce your sugar, you reduce alcohol, and your C-reactive protein is high, or your HDL, so your LDL cholesterol is still in a high side, that might be something to look into the liver. And so when people can't get the cholesterol down, the liver is largely responsible for that. So that's something to look into. So that's about markers. So CPU reactive protein, the liver enzymes in your comprehensive metabolic panel, as well as looking at your cholesterol numbers. Here's several symptoms that are pretty indicative of liver issues. One thing is that your eye, instead of having like nice white eye, your eye whites being white, they're actually yellow. That's a very much of a sort of a liver issue. Another one is when you're suddenly really sensitive to perfumes and smells, and like you walk into like CVS and like 20 minutes after 10 minutes in, you're like, whoa, I got a real headache. Or you go to a gas station and just being exposed to those fumes, you're like getting nauseous and like really feeling off. That could be an indication of a liver issue. So why? Because the liver is responsible for detoxing you, right? And it's just not able to cope with the detoxification process. And so that's one of the reasons why that happens. Another one, which is an interesting one from the context of hormones, is that when you're having a lot of really negative reactions or paradoxical reactions to hormone replacement therapy, that could also be due to your liver. So occasionally we get people saying, like I did your progesterone, and instead of feeling great like everyone else, I thought I was going to be sleeping better. I'm going to be so much calmer, because everybody says on Wellena that I read the reviews and everybody's like raving, and I'm just like getting anxious and I can't sleep, and I'm a mess. And so that could be also, again, a liver function when you're reacting negatively to hormone replacement therapy. Okay. For those of you who are on thyroid medication, is one indicator that's really interesting is that if your provider is increasing the dose or your T4 hormone, so like Synthroid, for example, and instead of feeling better, you're feeling worse, the liver is responsible. Like I mentioned at the beginning of this video, your liver is the one responsible for converting T4 to T3. And so when you're not converting that to T3 to make you feel better, that could be one reason, is that your liver is just not doing its job at its optimal, right? So those are some of the things. People who practice traditional Chinese medicine like to say that the liver hours between 1 and 3 a.m., right? And that's when you wake up. I would argue that when you're in perimenopause, there's a lot of reasons why you wake up, and the liver, yeah, sure, the liver could be one of it, but I have found that women who have like low progesterone or fluctuating estrogen levels, melatonin issues, or you look at your screen for too long before going to bed, and the blue light is just killing your melatonin native production, that's what's gonna wake you up too. So I'm not sure if it's just the liver itself. But anyway, the point is that if you are waking up between 1 and 3, I think there's no harm in doing a bit of liver support anyway. Like I said before, it's like a sieve, right? That just needs to be kind of like turned up. Like when you're straining a bone broth, right? And there's all this gunk in there, and like once in a while you just need to turn it around, just like get this gunk out, right? I feel like this is the same thing, when it comes to our liver and the hormone support. Okay, so let's talk about the next thing. So let me just wrap up this segment maybe on liver. Is that what can you expect when you do support your liver, right? And it's so many things. Number one is your hormones are probably gonna feel a little better. And so everything from energy, people say they sleep a lot better, they get a lot more mental clarity. One thing for those of you who are familiar with traditional Chinese medicine, the liver is considered an anger organ, right? And you know what? I shared this in February when we did a big push on the liver. In February, we did a lot of education on the liver. And I chose to talk about the liver in February because my dad was, it wasn't in January this year. So it was in January because my dad was dying of liver cancer. And so one of the things that just came and hit me really hard when I spent time with him, I was there for 5 weeks back in Poland, where I originally came from. And, one thing that really stood out to me was that, my dad never fully got over the horrendous ordeal that my mother put him through. And unfortunately, he married a woman who was borderline, who still is. I mean, there's no particular cure for borderline. So she's a borderline narcissist. And, the upheaval that she put all of us through, but I think my sister and I somehow managed to process that and move on. Where my dad, even when he was dying, he still kept talking about stuff that she did to him 30 years ago. And I did say this to him. I said, Dad, you have so much of trauma from that marriage. You still talk about it 30 years later. You haven't even seen her for 15 years and you still talk about that stuff. And, I don't think he was getting it. But actually, since we are talking about liver health here, one of the things that you might experience as you physiologically support your liver is actually a lot of relief of anger when I used to do like something called the thyroid detox, it was like this. I think we still offer this program, and it's a self-guided, like a 12-day program. It's a really nice program to do. But then again, like, you know, you do it for 12 days, and the question is, what do you do after, right? And so I'm more interested in what you do every day than doing the 12-day thing. But one of the things that I remember doing with the thyroid detox program was when we had live participants and I was guiding people, and every other day we'd get on calls together. We had always in a group like a couple of people who had a bit of a breakdown, if you will, like an anger breakdown. The worst one was when somebody called me and she said, I really need to talk to you. So I gave her my cell phone, and she said, you know, I wanted to throw my puppy out of the window. And that's when I realized, like, okay, this is obviously really serious. And so I've asked her to stop the detox. But the message that I, you know, that the lesson I got from this was to go really slow, especially when you're doing deep detoxes with your liver. But it's also the amount of release and anger that it does get rid of is pretty, and it can really stir a lot of things up. When people, however, come out on the other side of really supporting the liver, is not just all that, you know, your eyes are sparkly and you've got more energy and you're sleeping really better and your skin is clear and your thoughts are clear, but it was fascinating to see, like, on the emotional side, like how much have people let go of because that anger was gone, right? Like that organ doesn't store that anger anymore. And so letting go of that, an incredible amount of clarity of what they wanted in life. And, you know, like I used to joke about it, that we, you know, when you do a detox, you're going to leave your husband. But it was kind of a joke, but it wasn't, because we had so many women, like many of these women I kept in touch with, you know, over the years. And especially when I was in private practice. It's different now when I'm online. It's a little bit more impersonal, you know, like we don't chat, like, you know, often here. I mean, you guys make comments, I may comment back, right? But it's not like we are a close circle of friends. But when I was in private practice, it was a lot more intimate, and I remain friends, like, you know, kind of friends with a number of these women. And so I knew what was happening in their lives. And we had like a private group where there was a lot of openness about things. And I cannot tell you how many women have said, enough, I'm married to a toxic man, I need to honor myself, it's like, to hell with this, and got the courage to walk away from toxic marriages, walk away from toxic jobs. And so anyway, I'm kind of like, I think it's a fascinating topic, so I just can't stop talking about it. But yes, so that's all your liver, you know. So let's talk a little bit about B vitamins. So that's a really interesting one. And let me just pull out my cheat sheet. So we have a cheat sheet for those of you who follow us on, well, I think all of you are following us on social. That's why you're here on those lives. But I know Instagram and Facebook don't often show sometimes these things. So just letting you know that there's a really nice chart that we have. It's called the vitamin B deficiencies, both on Facebook and on Instagram. If you just scroll down, you can take a look and see potentially what are the B vitamins that you're deficient in. So let me just do a quick, like a rundown of those. So B1, which is a big one, B1, fatigue, brain fog. B1, if I was to talk, like B1 is like food and superpowers and energy for your brain, right? So if you're struggling with like brain fog and forgetfulness, it could be low estrogen for sure, but it could also be B1 vitamin or both. Craving carbs and, you know, craving things like, so craving carbs. And B1 deficiency often happens because of drinking too much alcohol, coffee, or taking sulfa drugs, or a contraceptive. So by the way, oral contraceptives are huge vitamin and mineral muggers. So just FYI, and I hope that not many of you are here on that stuff. Let's talk about B2. So riboflavin, your eyes get tired really easily. Dandruff, mouth cracks and sores, slow thyroid, slow detoxifier, difficulty digesting protein, fats, and fiber, and fats. Carbs and protein. Niacin, B3, can manifest in form of depression, poor memory, history of gallstone, gallbladder problems, and low stomach acid. LDL cholesterol is high. So again, so you can see here, right, the theme of like how much of that stuff is connected to your liver, like gallstones, gallbladder. LDL cholesterol is high. So LDL cholesterol is the bad cholesterol, as you probably have figured out. Vitamin B6, that's a huge one. So vitamin B6, pyridoxine, is vital for production of a number of different hormones and neurotransmitters, including serotonin and dopamine. And so when you're low on that, you also tend to be low on different neurotransmitters. And so we don't want that. How do you know you may be low? Water retention. So it's like, taking off a ring is a problem. Low stomach acid, high homocysteine levels, fatigue, headache, anemia, convulsions, food high. So what's causing this is also food high. Okay, so let me skip that. Okay, so that's about B6. And for let me see, B5, we have pantothenic acid. Long periods of stress and depression can be depleting that. Fatigue, headaches, nausea, tingling in the hands. Folate, we have uterine and B9, right? Cervical dysplasia, high homocysteine levels, depression, anxiety, red and sore tongue, poor memory, and feeling anemic. And then B12, many of you know, it's anemia, fatigue, depression, poor memory, canker sores, and many vegans and vegetarians are low in vitamin B12. So a lot of people know that. So that's basically your list. And so remember how I said that your liver, in order to function properly, has to have these buddies, cofactors, right? So it's a little bit like, your liver needs to marry off those toxins and couple them up with something. And so that's something can be, is actually, I take it back. So that's something will be things like sulfur, or like the cofactors are like that master of ceremony, like the person who's marrying you off. I think that's the best analogy that I can use here. That's a cofactor. So magnesium is huge, vitamin Bs are huge, and almost every aspect in your liver detoxification, your B vitamins are going to be really important. So if you want to support us, we do have a wonderful B vitamins in our store called B Maximus. If you have your own favorite brand, that's totally cool. But just look out for a couple of things to make sure it's a really high quality B vitamin. How do you know it's a high quality one? First of all, don't let marketing sway you too much. But, look at that. So just a quick thing here. I just want to mention this. In my past life, I used to work in advertising. So I always like to joke that in my past life, I was focused on like the front, of the label, of like saying things like, making it look visually beautiful and appealing and clear and whatever, right? And then these days, I had like a major change of career, right? And set up this business. Then I'm just like, all I'm doing is just creating this, right? And that's really what matters, because this is what the truth is to some degree. I mean, regulations on supplements and food in the United States is pathetic. So it's not always the best, but it gives you some better story, certainly better than the front. The front is this is all bullshit. This is all marketing. I'll be the first to say. I came from advertising, so I can say that. Okay, so what to look out for? How do you know it's a good B vitamin? In a methylated form, you want to look at vitamin B6 and vitamin B12 being in a methylated form. So B12, you want to see this as a methylated vitamin B12 in a methylcobalamin and not a methyl cyanide form. That's really, really important. The other thing to look at is when you look at vitamin B6, you want to see a P5P in it. So vitamin B6, when it's already converted for you, so you don't depend on your body to convert, don't think your body is just going to be like, it's not like a switch. Like the body needs to have certain cofactors, again, to make that conversion from B6 to those forms of vitamin B6 that are actually usable by the body. So look for the B6 having P5P in it. And then in the other ingredients, like you really do not want to see titanium oxide. Okay, you can see silicon oxide, that's fine, but never titanium oxide. So I'm just gonna give you these 3 pointers about looking out for good quality vitamin B12. If I found, that it's not methylated or it contained titanium oxide, I would stay away from that brand very, very far. So that's your pointer for B vitamins. And if you don't want to take a supplement, I totally respect that. The challenge with meat is that it doesn't, the pieces of meat that are richest in B vitamins will be your organ meats. Okay, so things like your kidney, liver. I don't think heart is really that high, and heart is really not an organ. If you think it is an organ, but it's not like, it's actually a muscle, right? If you think about it, heart is a muscle, and it's actually, for those of you who tried heart before, it's actually super tasty. During the botany course, there was a woman from Idaho who was a hunter, and she brought half a deer with her in her freezer. So pretty much for the past, for the last, we ate deer throughout much of our botany course, which was delicious. And one of the things that she brought was a heart. And some people were squeamish, and I don't know why, because it tastes fantastic. But anyway, liver is something that is, if you can score high quality liver from a grass-finished, grass-fed and grass-finished cows, that's great. From pigs, it's pretty intense, that liver, and so on and so forth. So just make sure your sources are good. Chicken livers are also pretty tasty. I personally love them. I buy them once in a while at Whole Foods. They're very inexpensive. Little box, like a whole container is like $3-4, which is like so cheap compared to everything else right now. And I typically share them with my dogs. So I get the spiced up ones, and I love to cook mine with a bit of fennel seed and coriander and salt, and they're like so yum. And then my dogs get it without the spices, and so we have a little feast together. So if you are unless you're eating B vitamins, the other option is to really depend on a good B vitamin supplement. One other symptom we forgot to mention, and I get that when I stopped taking our supplement. I ran out the other day, and when I was in my camper van, and I started getting like these skin flyaways here. So when you have those happening, that is also a B vitamin deficiency. And the minute I started taking B vitamin, it all came back. It all went away. Okay, so lastly, let's talk about magnesium and another cofactor. Guess what? So magnesium is another cofactor for liver detoxification again. So we have a theme going on here, right? And yet so many people are deficient in magnesium. So we have a really great post for you, or a graphic, I should say, with different types of magnesiums. Hopefully this is helpful for you, just to show you what magnesium threonate does, what glycinate does, what malate does, what citrate does, and what oxide does. And so let's talk about a couple of symptoms of magnesium deficiency. Can you guys guess, or just maybe post? I'm gonna have a glass of water, and maybe if you can post and guess, what are some of the symptoms of magnesium deficiency? What do you think is showing up? I'm gonna just look at the comments. Oops, Instagram, so many comments came in. I was missing that. Hair loss, no, that would not be much. Bad sleep, yes. Bad sleep is one of the symptoms. Headaches, absolutely, yes. We just had a big discussion on our closed forum about how women get Botox for migraines and headaches. And it's for me, it's pretty upsetting to read this, because Botox is a neurotoxin. And if you want a Botox because you want to look younger, it's one thing, but Botoxing just to get rid of a migraine, I think it's just a real discourse, a real misdirection, because there's a reason why your body is struggling with a migraine. And the question is, what's causing that migraine, right? And so magnesium deficiency is definitely one of the reasons. So some of you are saying constipation. Yes. Muscle twitching. Absolutely. Restless leg syndrome. Restlessness. Yes, you guys are good. Muscle pain. Yes, absolutely. So you guys mentioned sleep. So let me give you a few other ones, which are kind of surprising. Heart palpitations. And it could be also due to thyroid. It could be, due to other reasons, potassium deficiency, whatnot. But magnesium is one thing to also rule out. And for those of you who crave chocolate like crazy, that's a really interesting one. But, cacao is very high in magnesium. So what happens is your body is like used to it, that every time you have a piece of chocolate, your body is like, woohoo, I guess it's got some magnesium here. So you crave chocolate. You generally crave, food cravings are fascinating because you crave things your body's kind of needs. That doesn't mean sugar. Okay, like sugar is one kind of craving that is not something you should be giving into, or rather I should say, it opens up a question of why are you craving sugar, right? Is it a comfort thing? Is it candida of like what's yeast infection, like what's happening here, right? But anyway, so back to cacao is high in magnesium. So, it's actually, you may not feel like having sugar per se, but you might be feeling like, I just want chocolate, not for the sweet of it, but just, and so is the magnesium. So it is really interesting one to consider. And let's see, few of the things that, a lot of people don't realize is that magnesium is also like for breast health, for example. A lot of women who have fibrocystic breasts, just upping your magnesium is going to help a lot. It might help your constipation, restless leg, like I mentioned before, a lot of body pains and aches. Is also going to help your quality of sleep and brain function. So especially magnesium threonate. Magnesium threonate, we call it Brainy Mag in our store. We just released that new product. It's pretty awesome, and it tastes really good. And it's I will say it's really well formulated, even though we use stevia in it. You can't taste the stevia. I don't like stevia, but it tastes actually really good. It's like a really great afternoon pick-me-up drink when you want your brain to be like a little bit more on. So yeah, so how much do you take is a common question. Somebody's saying, I take 600 milligrams a day for constipation. That's awesome. And you want to start off at 300 milligrams. You want to go up to a point where you get loose bowels. So that's called the bowel challenge test. You can use that for vitamin C. You can use that for magnesium, where basically you titrate up until you get loose bowels, and that is telling you that, so for example, let's just say I take magnesium every day. I know I'm not depleted. So for me, like 900 milligrams will probably give me loose stool. But for some of you who are very depleted in magnesium, what might happen is that you might need, say, even 2,400 milligrams every day for a couple of weeks. Only then you're going to get loose bowels, right? So it's really interesting to learn that method, because it gives you an ability to replenish your magnesium levels really quickly, and then you back off to a daily dose. So like, for example, for Salas, for Roxanne, it's 600 milligrams. For me, it's about 600 milligrams as well. If I go higher, I get loose bowels. So Salas is asking, what do you think about monk fruit sugar? I think it's a great one. The only tricky thing is that in most health food stores, it's combined with erythritol, and so, which is a sugar alcohol, and I do not recommend it. And so you're gonna just watch out for that. You can buy plain monk fruit online in different places, and so that is a better, healthier choice. I'm not a fan of sugar alcohols, that's for sure. They can really mess with your gut. Yarka, I'm sorry, is it Yarka? She says, I love your Mag Brain. Thank you. It's actually Brainy Mag. Okay, so, and so let's maybe just before we wrap up, I'll just mention a couple of top types of magnesium just to give you an idea. We have a really nice chart for you about the different types of magnesium, what it does. So I just want to maybe mention we are reformulating our Magnesium Replenish. Like this is our number one selling product actually, is Magnesium Replenish, interestingly. And so it's made with magnesium glycinate, and we are reformulating that. And I know you guys are going to think we are completely crazy, but we were reformulating that and adding just a tiny bit of oxide into it. And the reason why we're doing that is because when you add oxide, magnesium oxide, to a formula, what it does is changes the pH in your digestive tract, and it makes the absorption of the glycinate then even better. So, I know I've been bitching around the whole magnesium oxide for so long, always like, when you find magnesium oxide in your formula, throw it away. If it's the only form of magnesium in your supplement, I still stand by that. That's the cheapest form of magnesium. It is highly ineffective. It's poorly absorbed. It doesn't do much for you. In fact, people who take higher doses also complain that they have pain in their joints. So I stand by that. That's if the only form of magnesium, that's not a high quality supplement. In fact, if a supplement company is using magnesium oxide, let's say in a multivitamin, or selling magnesium oxide as like the magnesium of the brand, is just a shyster company. Honestly, like this is not a high quality supplement company, and you should stay away from it. A lot of multi-level marketing companies use magnesium oxide and call it the super magnesium, and then I'm just like looking at the thing and it's got like magnesium oxide and then a magnesium citrate in it. Like, no. So from an absorption perspective, the highest quality, and it's going to be more expensive to buy it, but I mean, you sometimes you just pay a little bit more to get the bang for your buck. Your magnesium glycinate is going to be amazing. Your magnesium malate is going to be amazing for absorption. Malate can be slightly energizing. So it could be, it doesn't have to be. For me, it is. So like I learned it the hard way, taking magnesium malate at night, and I couldn't sleep till like 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. And I was like, what's going on here? My body is, is going crazy. But anyway, so I figured it out and so change that. And so malate, I take it out in the mornings. But there are people who do take malate at night and they can sleep totally fine. So you need to check it out for yourself. But it's highly absorbed. It's really great in that way. Threonate is the brainy mag that we talked about. And that's like really great for sparking up your brain during the day. And when you take it at night, it actually calms you down. And it's the only form of magnesium that crosses over to crosses the blood-brain barrier. Citrate is, I think, okay, but it's more from a perspective not to replenish your magnesium levels, but it's more to give you a little bit of a laxative effect, especially if you're traveling, if you're still figuring out what's causing the constipation, having citrate on hand just to create the bowel movement so you don't walk around constipated and recycle all these toxins might be a really good idea. And like I said, oxide can be a laxative as well, but nothing more than that. And in small amounts, and I just want to stress, in small amounts, it can be change the pH and help with absorption of other forms of magnesium. So this is the reason why the Magnesium Replenish, so I'm just giving you a heads up, the Magnesium Replenish that we are now having in our store, that's going to get reformulated with this new piece of research in the coming couple of months, I think, or so. We are going to be launching that new formula. So just heads up on that. Okay. We're always looking out for new research or new ways of doing things, and and figuring out what's better. And if it means reformulating, we'll do that in order to put up a good product out there. Okay. So I hope this was helpful, you guys. It's so good to be back and talk to you and have this, however superficial, conversations. I wish we could all sit in the same room and just have a really good chat. Let's see. Jen, do you want me to take any questions before we sign off? I already answered that question about monk fruits. Malate for energy. Yes. So malate is great, for energy, but also it helps your ATP, so your mitochondrial production, and is really great for post-exercise recovery. So as your muscles do all that work, it's really great to then take some magnesium malate afterwards, and it's got really great research showing for athletes in recovery, replenishing magnesium for recovery of muscles. Let's see. When do you take supplements versus vitamins? Well, I mean, a lot of vitamins are in the supplements. I'm not sure what the question is. When is the next time to take? The best time, I think, to take magnesium glycinate. Yeah, so you can take it anytime you want. So you can take it in the morning. You can take it at night. It's not gonna make you fall asleep or anything like that. Neither is it energizing. Do you take magnesium in one dose or spread it throughout the day? You can spread it out throughout the day. Actually, like smaller doses more often is better than like one big dose for just simply for absorption purposes. Sharon's saying, I have a really bad trapped gas. This is a big problem. How do I stop this? So first thing you need to look at is what's causing a lot of that gas. Is it food that you're eating? So, do you have problems with FODMAPs with certain foods like garlic, onions? Are you eating gluten, dairy? Is that causing the gas? And then the next question is, how well is your body breaking down the food, right? So, when we create a lot of gases because your body's just not digesting the food properly and is sitting there and is basically rotting, fermenting, and creating gas, right? So that's just the gist of it. So supporting your, like having, for example, digestive enzymes before a meal, or increasing your stomach acid prior to eating could be really helpful in breaking this down. This will be like the first course of action. If those things don't work, then you're gonna look into other things such as parasites, for example. What do you like best for energy? Katie's saying, so for magnesium, you mean? I would say Mag Energy. And then B vitamins, by the way, you guys, it's always you take it first thing in the morning, yeah? Because B vitamins are energizing. I take magnesium, okay. And then if you take calcium, should it be separated from magnesium? No, it doesn't have to be. A lot of formulas are put together. Hey, you guys, I don't want to talk about any other things right now, like sugars and stuff like that. We want to just be focused on the topic of magnesium, B vitamins. Can you take too much magnesium? My doctor told me to be careful. Sure, yeah. So you can, and this is when you want to do the bowel test, and then from there you know what's too much, and then you back off to the dose that you need. Also in times of stress, just to let you know, when you're going through time of stress, or even like it can be emotional stress, but also can be physical stress, like training for a marathon or traveling, or emotional stress, right? Like losing a job, fighting with your boss, having a shitty husband. All of that is stress, and then the body gets really quickly depleted in magnesium, vitamin C, and B vitamins, right? So that's another reason why then the liver again gets impacted, and then your hormones get impacted. So like a little domino effect. Anyway, I better stop talking. I hope this was helpful, you guys, for today. It was lovely seeing you again. I'm planning to be back on here on Thursdays as much as I can, unless I'm traveling or something else is happening. And we've got a topic of breast health coming in October, because it's supposed to be Breast Cancer Awareness Month. And I say BS to the whole awareness thing. I think we are very well aware it's a problem. Let's talk about solutions. I think that's something that's really missing from my conversation in October. So I'm not doing that because of the whole breast cancer awareness and the idiotic pink ribbons thing, but we're doing it more just to create awareness about breast health and prevention. And because I think that's what was really missing from my conversation. So October, you're going to be hearing a lot from us about breast health. And but next week, we have something about estrogen dominance coming up. So we're going to talk about my favorite topic of estrogen dominance. So stay tuned for that one. All right. Thanks, everyone. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your questions. And hopefully I will see you next week. Bye.